Welcome to the Sun Today for the 3rd of February 2025. It's been a very busy day, particularly from the point of view of M flares. It's been one of our busiest days so far this cycle. To summarize, activity has been high today. The sunspot number is up slightly to 180. There's a new region coming over the east limb. There's also a new region forming in the northeast, and more on that later. Flare activity has been high. We've had 8 C flares, that's up from yesterday. We've had 10 M flares, that's up a lot from yesterday. But we've only had 4 coronal mass ejections, which is lower, and that is somewhat surprising. The solar wind speed has dropped further to about 450 kilometers per second. And the KP index, a measure of how agitated the Earth's magnetosphere is very low, very quiet. We now have 10 sunspot regions on the Sun, 2 of which are new and not numbered as yet. As I said, the sunspot number has risen to about 180, and the area is down to 890, marginally down that would be, because it was only 910 yesterday. 3981 has continued to grow and is now the largest region on the Sun. And as you can see on the far left in red, there is a sunspot just coming over the east limb. And I think that might be the return of region 2964. There's also another region in the northeast marked with a red question mark, which is just forming, and you can see there's about 4 or 5 spots there from this new region. We're just losing 3979 over the west limb. As I mentioned before, the KP index is now very low. It's between 0 and 1. That means that the magnetosphere is relatively quiet. And that's because the 2 large coronal holes that were in the western part of the Sun the last couple of days have moved round and are no longer affecting the Earth as much as they were before. However, there's a new coronal hole coming over the east limb, and that one is quite extended north-south, so is bound to sweep across the Earth at some point. But it's very narrow, so I don't think the effect will be very long, and it'll at least be a week before we feel its effects. The auroral arc looks very weak, which corresponds to the low KP index, so I'm not expecting any major aurora to be visible anytime soon. I said that the flare activity was relatively high, and so let's take a look at that. We're going to use the Solar Dynamics Observatory AIA instrument, 131 angstroms. That's about 10 million degrees Kelvin. So the bright areas here will be really flare material. It'll be a 1-day long video for the 3rd of February, and we'll have 2 repeats of it. There was a filament eruption off the southwest limb, and I've made a short video of that, but here using the Solar Dynamics Observatory AIA helium-2 304 channel, which corresponds to the transition region, so it's about 50,000 degrees Kelvin. So relatively cool compared with all the other images that I'm showing you. This is going to be a 3-hour movie taken on the 3rd of February. It's on the southwest limb of the Sun, and we'll show 2 repeats. As I said, CME activity was surprisingly low with only 4 registered CMEs, although that may just be an incomplete listing for today. But the solar wind activity was low at 450 kilometers per second, and so I'll show you first of all a video of the C2 coronagraph. That's the high resolution inner coronagraph with an SDO8 helium-2 304 disk image, to show the coronal mass ejections. Then we'll look at the C2 and C3 coronagraphs from SOHO, and that will show the large-scale structure of the corona. The forecast for the coming days is going to be rather difficult. I suspect the sunspot number may increase further or remain about where it is now. More big flares are likely. In fact, we just had an M flare, so that's a fairly easy forecast. We are forecasting weak geomagnetic activity because of the passing of those two coronal holes, and unless we get a major coronal mass ejection, it'll be at least a week before we get any more high-speed solar wind streams. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Stay safe until next time. Goodbye.